Welcome to the Signal 50 podcast with your hosts Alpha and Bravo, and we brought back our special guest Delta for this go-around. Episode 9, lots of stuff going on, and we want to talk about it. I'm sure everybody's been watching the news. Now it's time to hear our opinion and take on it. How you guys doing tonight?
Hey, it's Bravo here. Welcome back, Delta. Glad to have you. Alpha, great to hear from you again. It's a great night to start talking about what we think is going on with the news.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here. Had a wonderful time last time. Appreciate you inviting me back. This is great.
Well, we like having you, so you're welcome anytime. So, a little housekeeping up front. We got to move this along. This is a 6-page show tonight, so there's a lot of material to get through. We got to move it along really, really quickly. So, without a whole lot of stuff, we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. As you all know, we're out there on Parler, Rumble, a bunch of different platforms. Unfortunately, YouTube too. There's kind of no way around it. We avoid Twitter and Facebook like the plague. We'll get into that later.
We will not use them. Yep, don't use them.
No, we'll get into that later. But we just wanted to let everybody know that through your viewership and your rumbling us on Rumble, we've made 9 cents.
On Rumble, yes.
Yes,
9 cents. And we appreciate that. And we are flattered. We're humbled.
That's right.
And quite frankly, we're having a blast. Again, these are conversations that we're having that we would normally have on the phone, and this actually makes it a little bit more regular for us. So we actually get to enjoy each other's company, share our views, and we're glad that everyone out there wants to share our views with us and learn something or help us learn something too.
That's right. That's right. And we really appreciate everybody tuning in and giving us your valuable time. We really appreciate it. So without a whole lot of delay, you know how we do the show. We're going to give you our points, what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about them. Then we'll tell you what we talked about. So to start it off, our first topic, we talked a little bit about in one of the prior episodes about the narrative surrounding Antifa, BLM, and the fringe elements that are out there causing trouble. And what we really want to talk about is we'll recap a little bit of that and give you some of our feelings on that and our take. And what we really want to talk about in this episode is, going back, backtracking again, giving you our thoughts on where it was, where it is, and most importantly, where I think this or where we think this might go after the election. Just because the election's over does not mean that this nonsense is going to stop with these people. So we'll get into that. Our second point we're going to talk about is the very real specter of voter fraud, and how the media.
Real?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and how we think it came about, what we think is behind it. As just a regular guy take on it, without a whole lot of nonsense. We'll just get into where we think that came from, and I'm sure everyone's been watching the news. Our last point. Let's talk about Hunter Biden, right?
Shall we?
I think we should. I honest to God, I think he deserves a little bit of engagement over what's been going on there, and some stunning stuff. So,
yeah, we'll make sure to bring our opinion into that too. That's our opinion section of the show.
That's right.
And we've been revving up the old research machine, and we've been finding some interesting articles, and we're going to put it all together and let you decide.
Right. We talk, you decide. So let's get into it then, shall we? Let's start off with our favorite group of little miscreants, Antifa. Right.
And I do want to say, Alpha, you got to include BLM Inc. into that.
Yeah.
Again, you know what my position is. All lives matter, not just black ones, white ones, yellow ones, green ones, blue ones, purple ones. Everyone matters.
When somebody was laying there in the street, it didn't matter what color they were. They got the same treatment. It doesn't
That's
make
right, because we all bleed red.
That's correct. And we're all Americans after all.
And to be honest, gentlemen, if Black lives really mattered the way that they are talking about it, you would go to places like Chicago and Baltimore, and they would put their resources and efforts into supporting and saving, some just really horrible stuff that's happening in the African American community in those cities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the Democratic mantra? never let a crisis go to waste. So you're
Yep.
absolutely right there, Delta. It's awful what's going on. So, it's an interesting thought and a narrative that's out there. And one of the presidential candidates out there, Joe Biden, he believes that Antifa is an idea. We talked a little bit about this in one of our previous episodes, an idea where we went ahead and we pulled some information from a podcast that we picked up that was one of Antifa's official podcasts called The Ex-Worker. Don't want to give them too much more attention. You can find them if you want. They're just awful. Their stuff is just awful. Where they kind of tried to dispel the idea that they were an organization, but then later in the podcast, they just kind of went into how they're an organization and how they lend support to other groups that are causing civil unrest in the United States. It was quite stunning, actually. So, with that, Bravo's got some information from the Washington Post.
Actually, Delta actually brought
Delta.
this to us.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, credit where credit's due. But
absolutely,
just to add to quickly before Delta jumps in, I do agree that the whole narrative, again, you're setting up something. They're doing two things at once: a narrative and downplay. And we'll get into that a little bit more. What I mean by downplaying something, and relate it to what we do for when we're working on our day job sometimes. So, go ahead there, Delta. What did you come up with?
Yeah, so interesting as I was reading through it. So the anti-fascist movement, right? If you really, I want to separate what's happening in America now versus what the institution was when it started. It started in Europe a couple hundred years ago, I think, according to the article. And it was really, again, anti-fascist, right? So there was a lot of corruption in government and so on and so forth. And this group was created to be really the answer to the super right was Antifa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they did things like protests, mostly peaceful, and just come up with ideas and an alternate way of thinking. Nowadays, it's not idea against idea, right? So nowadays, what you're finding is they're taking that super far left mentality, and they're exercising it using violence. So it's not just me standing on one side of the room yelling at the top of my lungs that which you would oppose at the top of yours. It is me standing in the side of a room yelling something at the top of my lungs, which you oppose with a baseball bat. Okay. So, and as you see in, Portland and Seattle, and some of these other cities across the country, the notion that you can burn down a city because you don't agree with the politics is not helpful to anybody. And one final point on this, Joe Biden mentioned in the last debate that Antifa was an idea, and I think Alpha brought this up in the beginning. It's not an idea when people are getting their teeth knocked out. And there was a recent example of that at a conservative protest this past weekend. I don't remember where it was, but the leader of the protest got punched and lost his two front teeth. So that's not an idea. Ideas don't hurt people.
No, they're definitely a violent group of people with a stated goal, right? And people with goals are organized, and it is not just an idea. It's a movement. It's an organization. When they have lawyers and logisticians that arrange things for them, and they have legal defenses set up, and they have a network of support, it's a terrorist organization.
Definitely.
Quite honestly.
And you have Kamala Harris actually tweeting out where to support with funds for those who get arrested.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, right. You know what? Also, this point you're bringing up, Delta, is very good because we did bring it up in terms of when you have particular narratives that they're trying to set with the ultimate goal to get their either they subdue it or they gaslight about it. But really, what you're bringing up here is it falls right in line with agenda setting theory. One of the shows we talked about this. Again, Dr. Steve Turley, who turned me on to this idea. The press is really the main perpetrator of this, where they're trying to make everyone on the other end of the media, and most people don't take the time to look look for the hard truth, which is what we do here at the Signal 50 podcast. But they kind of take whatever the path of least resistance, whatever spoon fed to them, they take it, and the media is then able to groom those listeners, those people that are ingesting this false narrative or this agenda setting theory, to make it normal, so that as the election happens, you've heard things out there from, we're all like shaking our heads. I hear this, and there's going to be a bunch of, the election is not going to come in. The results will not be available that night. I can tell you for the last, God, for how many years I've been around watching elections when I first could vote, I would rather watch election returns than the Super Bowl. That's how much I really enjoyed this kind of stuff. I know I just let my geek out, but I rather listen to the election returns. And one of the things that the press was saying, get ready, the results won't be back for weeks. That sets up another domino to fall where they're going to contest this. They're telling you have Hillary Clinton, who was actually advised back in 2016 to basically knock, she conceded because Obama said to do so, and she's regretted it and she's blamed him, all this other nonsense. They're telling Biden not to concede. And when it comes down to reality, if you look at the Georgia governor race, someone helped me out here a couple years ago with
Yeah.
right. She would not concede. She still didn't. Well, guess what? She didn't win as governor either. So go away. You know what? That's a saying. Don't go away mad. Just go away. And that's what ended up happening. So this is a very good pickup, Delta. I really see where this is going, and it seems like these puzzle pieces are starting to fit together.
Yeah. So Stacey Abrams, still, I don't believe she actually conceded, even as of today. I think life went on, but yeah. And the interesting thing is, not to get into too much election politics, because I know we have a format for tonight, but if by some miracle Biden wins,
God forbid,
right, you're not going to see a bunch of neo-Nazi white supremacists out there rioting in the street. However, when Trump does win on November 3rd, you will see a continuation of the riots, because this feeds a narrative for the other side. And the narrative is the guy at the top is incapable of controlling society, when in reality, and I do want to make this point because not a lot of people say this, it is not his job. It is not I don't care if it's Biden or Trump. It is not the president's job to quell this violence in these cities. That belongs to the mayors first, right? I think we've all said we all have a little bit of emergency management background. So it is mayors first, then county, then state. And then when that all goes to crap, then you call in the feds.
You're correct. Has to do with powers delegated to the federal government versus what's delegated. The rest are delegated to the state.
That's right.
Or states. Excuse me. Sorry.
Well, part of what this is, they're trying to desensitize people and make it the new normal. We talked about this a little bit before. It's a norm for this kind of violence for whatever reason, and to kind of get people used to it. And Delta, you're exactly right. No matter who wins the next election on November 3rd, this is not going to stop.
It's sad. It really is. This is not the way it was supposed to be.
Right. This all goes to this. They've set a precedent here. There will never be, and when you look at what's going on, it kind of matches kind of a narrative that's gone all along. This country prides itself on a peaceful transfer of power. That's what separates us from the animals, right?
Yep.
The third world toilets where, somebody doesn't like the results of an election, so they take their military and wipe out the other party. It happens all the time. We don't do that here. Except the army for the other side is Antifa. But the thing about it is, you can't take a knee to the mob.
That's correct.
And that's what the Democrats have done, is they've taken a knee to Antifa and these other groups that are out there. Once you're on your knees, you can never stand up again, and they will run you. So that's a big problem.
Well, before we all get down in a big downer, I think the gig is up, just so that as we get this message out there, and whether this is a true signal 50 or maybe a signal 40, I don't know. But anyway, it's definitely in the caution category. Make sure everyone's gonna get out there and vote. Make sure you and vote for that down ticket. I'm going to keep saying it right up until election. Get out there and vote in person, and make sure that if you do have to vote absentee, that you do the process to request it. And we're going to kind of get into that next about the voting issues.
Right. Another thing that I want to talk about with Antifa, especially, and these groups that are out there, we talked about it in our last podcast. It's probably not a really great idea to be out there, and we shouldn't even have to talk about this in this country. We've gotten to the point, and Delta raised an excellent point, that we shouldn't even be talking about it in this country, because this is not how we are, and you should not be afraid to be out in the street peacefully expressing your views. But I think everybody ought to just take a breath and take a quick look around and understand really what's going on before they go out and do anything of the sort right now. It's just not worth the trouble. It just isn't.
Right.
Your personal safety is all that matters. And these people on the other side of things are truly violent. And we'll talk a little bit about that in another program. But, I think we've said enough about it. I think what we're doing, what's happening now, is we're all being set up for a narrative of, if you don't vote the right way and give us what we want, we're going to throw a temper tantrum until you give in. And I think the message here is, you can't take a knee to the mob, and you can never give in to these people, or you will never stop paying.
That's right.
So it's a big,
100%.
big problem.
Yep.
So, that really are the shock troops of the left, aren't they? It's really bad stuff.
Well, again, that's where it kind of leads into the next story here, where we're going to talk a little bit about the voter fraud and also something that you added, Alpha, the suppression, but it's real. And there's a lot of other factors that we want to raise with people out there who are listening to us today, and we'll kind of get into it here. Anything you wanted to add there, Alpha, just from a what we're going to talk about in this next section here?
Well, a lot of it, look, voter fraud is going to be a big problem, and I think a narrative has been set up. We're ripe for it with the the firsthand knowledge we have, all of us, over this COVID-19 panic that's going on, right? They've really, we've gotten to the point where people are riding in their own cars with masks and face shields on.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
or in their houses, right? Living in their house with a mask on, by themselves.
I can't even. Our neighbors were doing it again today. Not that I'm like a voyeur, but it's hard to miss, right? So yeah, they're in and out of their house wearing masks. So I just don't quite understand it. So anyhow, I think we've all been set up. Let's talk a little bit about the voter fraud because it's going to be a really big problem. And I think some of the contributing factors to that are definitely the COVID situation and the fear mongering that's been going on with it. Yes, in the very beginning, we were very scared this was going to be very bad. Now we understand a little bit more. I think everybody needs to slow down a little bit, but the mail-in voting, which was never really meant to happen, we're not set up for that in this country.
No.
We shouldn't be. We can't trust the mail. We'll get into that in a little bit. And the suppression portion of what it is. And even we're going to touch a little bit on the tech tyrants.
Mm-hmm.
And their in-kind contributions to the Democratic Party, suppressing stories that need to come out before the election, and that should come out. So without that, let's, Bravo. This is kind of your thing. So why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you. So I brought this to the table for us to discuss this evening about the voter fraud suppression, that it is real and that you have to be aware of it, and we'll kind of give you what our prescription is going to be at the end, but I want to kind of set this up. So now that President Trump and his rallies and the latest town halls, where again, not to go off on a tangent, but the town hall that he was just in, he was actually in a debate with Savannah there from NBC News. It was just funny.
Yeah, that was hardly a town hall.
That was not a town hall. The people that were asking questions were, it sounded like they were written for them. It was just ridiculous, but that's another story. Although the person that was behind President Trump's left shoulder, African-American woman, actually, it was amazing just to watch her, agreeing with the points, shaking her head. She became the overnight sensation of that. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time, but she was phenomenal.
What did our friend say about her? She's the hero we all needed.
That's right. So, hat tip to her. It was great to see her, shaking her head and agreeing, and whoever put her behind, I guess they seat people, and again, they seat people behind whoever they're going to, and the NBC must have thought that she was going to be, they did a little identity politics and got it wrong, which is fantastic. So NBC News, you whatever. But anyway, so getting back to the voter fraud, President Trump brought this up. He's talking about how there's numerous ballots that are out there. There's different ways to get your information. If you're listening to us, we appreciate it. Where you get your information is everything. So, and to support the fact that this voter fraud is real, there are websites that I go to kind of keep tabs on it. And from one of the websites is theheritage.org, and they have a running tab, and you can look at it by state. But overall, there's 1,298 instances of fraud as of today regarding the vote, right? And out of those instances, 1,121 have actual convictions. So this is real. This is a problem. One of the things.
So Bravo, does that just to clarify a bit? Mm-hmm. So the 1,298 instances, is that number of ballots, or is that the one of those instances could have been 50,000 ballots?
Actually, it's interesting you bring that up. Those are instances. Those are just people that not the numbers. Like one of our earlier shows, we talked about Project Veritas, and Project Veritas, was highlighting the fact that in Minnesota, this guy named Mohammed, a Somalian refugee, was bragging how he had 300 ballots in his car, and was taking more and more every day. These are just instances. These are not the aggregate. That number, from what I gathered, again, through this website, over 500,000 ballots are fraudulent, have been deemed fraudulent or thrown out, or and that's a lot of ballots. When you talk about 330 million citizens in the country, and you talk about some elections, and remember, elections happen on the local jurisdiction, and what ends up happening is that can swing votes. You can swing an election. Someone can win with 1,000. The margins are kind of small, and if it's all fraudulent, which it's truly showing to be, what are you going to do? So just another.
So I think it's also
Yeah.
important to note before you get into some of the other material that you brought that there's a difference between absentee ballots and mailing ballots. Okay. And I think that this gets lost. Okay. For a lot of people, I vote absentee ballot because I do not live in the state in which I am a resident of. Okay.
Yep.
And I've been doing it for years.
Right.
So circumstances have me not in the state and I'm unable to go to a polling place. That is different than my wife, for example, who received a mail-in ballot, right? Refused to fill it out because she will go to the polling place and vote in person. So there's a difference between mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. I think that's worth noting to folks.
Well, and you're highlighting you're basically, it's conflating. Again, that's where the press is conflating those two things: mail-in ballots versus absentee ballot. You have to send in a request. Once they process it, they identify who you are and the roles that they have. They send you an absentee ballot. There's a chain of custody that they can follow along versus an unsolicited ballot, which you mentioned, Delta, in a very eloquent way. That's a mail-in ballot. These things you can find all over the place. Not to mention, when you send it in, God forbid you trust the Postal Service. They've been throwing ballots. There's, and I'll talk about the sources here in a second. They've been throwing ballots out all over the place, just chucking them in garbage cans, dumpsters. It's ridiculous.
Well, wait a minute. You can't trust the United States Postal Service on the day-to-day. Never mind to trust them to handle something as important as an election. And
is it weird that I hope that when people send me stuff, it's by UPS or FedEx and not USPS?
No, not weird at all. Real quick side note. Where I live, we just one day stopped getting mail. The only thing we were getting were, newspaper, flyers, and crap shoved in our box that the Postal Service moves around for extra money. Our mail was not being delivered, and this went on for a while. I don't know what's coming in the mail until somebody, figures out that they got a jury duty subpoena or summons that they never received. Okay. That's a big deal, right? So we had an investigation done. Did you know that 21 people from our local post office were arrested because of the postal inspectors? There's a big dumping mail problem, and it's always gone on. So it's nothing new.
You think they confused it as a ballot or something that was like official, just to keep it out of your hands?
So, Bravo, do you vote by? Have you ever voted by mail or by absentee ballot?
I've had to.
Okay.
Vote by absentee ballot.
So the only reason why I ask is that the envelope actually says official election mail. There's really no mistaking what it is.
It's a very distinctive. It's a very distinctive envelope.
Yeah. I've seen that, but I was just wondering if these. What'd you say? 12 people were arrested from your post office.
They were more than that. It wasn't about ballots. It was just a day-to-day mail dumping operation. They didn't want to do their jobs. They were just tossing mail in dumpsters. Okay, so we did not receive mail. All right. So this notion that we're just going to go ahead and blindly send out ballots to people who haven't requested them, because as Delta said, there's a huge difference between a mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot.
Right.
It's the same ballot at the end of the day, but it is one you have to request through a specific process. The other one they're just going to send you. Can you just imagine the problems that's going to create when people vote in person and suddenly their ballot turns up in the Board of Elections office and they've already voted? How did that happen?
Right. Or someone steals it.
Don't forget that there are states out there that don't even require any sort of validation, right?
Right.
The mail-in ballot comes in, right? So Colorado's been doing mail-in voting for years. So they've actually done a pretty good job with it. But that took years. That wasn't like, oh no, COVID. Now all of a sudden we have to go to mail-in balloting. And you got a bunch of states that don't do this on the regular, and they are behind. And they cannot fix this problem. And the biggest issue really is, how do you validate that the person who sent the ballot in is the person who is on the ballot?
Again, if they're not using ID because it
Right.
quote suppresses the vote, that's their excuse. One way you can avoid that, there's another website called True the Vote, has another place where you can it's a resource to report fraud, and they have individualized state resources where they're making sure that they kind of act as a watchdog for resources, but they also help people become volunteers, poll watchers. And we're getting down to the wire here, but it's never too late. You can actually watch the polls. You can report things that are irregular. And that's one of the ways that you beat this. However, the media is overall silent because they're complicit with what's going on in the current voting atmosphere, I guess is the best way to put it.
So I think it's not only that they're complicit, Bravo. I think really what you're getting at, if I could put some words in your mouth, which for those of you in the audience need to know I've been doing for years. It's a matter of tipping the scale to what the outcome is that they want. So it's not necessarily complicity. It's more along the lines of, if I feel like I can put out the information that I need to put out to get a certain result, which is not Trump, then that's what I'm going to put out. And I think this is something we'll talk about in the next section here, but it all bleeds together because what you're talking about is setting a tone and you can look at 75% of the cable news channels out there, and they'll tell you that there's nothing wrong with mail-in balloting. And we all know that that's not true.
That's right. That's a bunch of BS. Now, where can you go? Where can you go to get these kind of information? So I keep my eyes out on Breitbart.com. Tatum Report. Officer Tatum is a past officer. He's on YouTube. I really enjoy his material, but he came out with a Tatum Report. And that's another answer to Drudge, who went full left and full narrative. And then you got the Bongino Report, and they run those stories too, keeping everyone abreast of what's going on. So here's just a couple of things that I pulled off of the Breitbart site. I encourage you to go there. You're not going to find it in the Google channel because Google is suppressing a whole bunch of stuff. We'll get into that in a second. But two things here for gentlemen to consider. The latest Breitbart story was that ballots were stolen in Washington State and dumped, and that there's documentation. They had the pictures to show it. It's been recovered, and those people have been arrested. And then in the court so there's the other version of this too that everyone needs to be aware of. Besides the front line, dumping of ballots, not delivering ballots, the postal side. There's also they're trying. Remember how the narrative we were talking about earlier in the show today? They're trying to set up a narrative. Well, they're trying to set up a narrative that this is okay, and they have lawyers ready to go and use the judicial system as a weapon in a policy setting agenda, not for what its intent is to interpret the Constitution. However, court battles today, they overturned the Michigan decision to extend the vote past the November 3rd date. All ballots must be in by 8 o'clock or local time in Michigan to be counted, which is a huge win for the right. And we shouldn't be talking about win.
Well, I don't think it's a win. I think November 3rd is the day you vote. You cast your ballot, and I firmly believe that you need to have your ballot cast by November 3rd, period, full stop. Postmark it, put it in the mail, do what you have to do. First of all, I don't like mail-in voting. I think it's a very bad idea. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that it creates an environment for fraud. Let's just look at what O'Keefe did with a sitting U.S. Congresswoman and her little voter fraud scheme that she's been running in Minneapolis. I'd be surprised if anything happens there. I really hope it does. She needs to pay. When a U.S. congressperson can run a voter fraud scandal, a scheme, you know, and do it relatively easily, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot, right? They've got it pretty well figured out. So, you know, you've covered the material really well, and I think we can all agree that mail-in balloting is a really bad idea. Now let's look at the why from kind of the regular guy viewpoint, considering everything that's been going on right now. Why is it happening? But, you know, let's back it up a little bit. You know, the narrative shaping and the nonsense that's going on and the suppression of information, suppression of the vote. First of all, let me talk a little bit about suppression, how I feel about it, and what I think suppression is. Polls out there right now, I know for a fact that they're lying. Even the Biden people have come out and say, we're really not double digits ahead. But all the polls have Joe Biden double digits ahead. Why? That's to make you think, oh, no matter what I do, my vote doesn't count. You know, oh, I was going to vote for Donald Trump, but you know what? It's all BS. The polls are BS. The polls were BS in 2016. I think it's really important to get into the why this is happening. What's going on? Why are platforms like Facebook and Twitter covering up what's going on with Joe Biden, right? Why is everything going on the way it's going on? Why suddenly do we have this phenomenon of mail-in voting? Why is it so important now? Coronavirus is the universal excuse that's being used. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't wear a tinfoil hat either. I think it's awfully convenient that the Chinese government unleashed a bioweapon on the world, crippled everybody, scared the crap out of everybody. You've got the liberal media spreading the narrative that, oh, you're going to die, you have to do mail-in voting, blah, 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 blah. I think it's also very interesting. I live in a 1.1 million resident county with only 40 polling places that are going to be open on election day. Isn't that convenient?
Yeah, right.
Talk about voter suppression.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you that all of us have gone to the grocery store since COVID started. I don't, you know, we stand 6 feet behind the person behind us, right? We walk through. I don't get COVID every time I go to the grocery store. I recently got a flu shot in a mass flu shot clinic, and we all stood 6 feet behind the person behind in front of us. So if you can do that stuff, I've actually taken pictures and posted to Parler and some of the other social media. If I can do this, why can't I vote in person?
Well, I'll tell you the why. Where are the majority of polling places set up in this country?
Ooh, I know.
Schools. Yeah, schools.
Yeah. What are closed conveniently?
What?
And the teachers union is heavily in favor of the Democrats. All right. So they're crying. The schools are closed. You can't go vote. The Chinese Communist Party set loose a virus on the world. They own the Bidens.
Yes, they do.
They own them. And with what's going on world economically, the Chinese were getting crushed by Donald Trump for the last 3 years. He was stomping them to death financially.
And will continue to.
God willing. The Chinese Communist Party wanted to buy this election to get out from underneath Donald Trump.
Right.
And this is how I think they did it. And with this mail-in voting thing, I think they might have tried to find a way to do it. And so far, I've got to hand it to the little bastards. They're pretty clever. They did a good job. The polling places are shut. and there's a huge push for mail-in voting. Listen, everybody out there listening, if you're going to have to vote by mail for whatever reason, if you don't feel comfortable going to your polling place, fill out your ballot. If you got one in the mail, it's not too late. I think it is too late. Today was the deadline to request a mail-in ballot. Do not mail in.
Absentee ballot or mail-in.
Absentee
like
or
the
mail-in. You can request a mail-in or absentee.
Yeah.
They didn't just automatically send them out where I live here.
Mm-hmm.
You had to request it. And I requested it because I'm on travel for election day. So what I'd recommend is take it to your local board of elections and put it in their Dropbox. Please at least do that. I think there's a big tie-in here with coronavirus, the timing, the election, the push for mail-in voting, the opportunity for fraud, and circling that all back to, quite honestly, the Democrat Party being indebted to the Chinese government. So, and now, you had this wonderful Cocktober surprise, I call it, where, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, the stunning revelation that he's been doing all sorts of untoward financial dealings in Ukraine and in China and God knows where else. And Facebook and Twitter, two of the largest social media platforms in the world, which I think is the dumbing down of the world if you have to follow that for your news. But they're suppressing that story. They've chosen to be a publisher.
This is completely... I think we're going to get into it in the opinion section, so maybe I'll save it a little. The fact is, for this section, it's wrong on so many levels. What happened this past week with regards to that story? New York Post is the fourth most popular news outlet in the country. It is not fake news. There was no reason for that stuff to be suppressed whatsoever, unless there was a political agenda, and that is a fact. And then we can talk about the opinion later.
Right, and that leads us right into the final stretch here. We're at 44 minutes, and we like to keep your attention, hopefully, for the full almost hour. We may go a little over this time because this is a 6-pager. A lot of material to cover here. This is really interesting times, and I think everybody needs to really be paying attention. So we're gonna really talk on the third point. And that was a really good discussion on the second point that we brought up tonight between the group here. The point 3, the Hunter Biden laptop fiasco.
I think it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest with you.
I think it's a blessing in disguise, but I think it's horrible. I mean,
so for clarity, this is the opinion section, right?
Right.
Can you get any more stupid? Can you be any more freaking dumb? I mean, you brought your laptop. I don't care if the guy was legally blind. You brought your laptop to a public place to get it fixed because that's where you had all your juicy stuff where you made all your money. Right? I mean, who doesn't have cloud? This is 2020. Who doesn't have cloud storage? Why do you need to throw the laptop out, get another laptop, hook it up to iCloud, you get your emails? But no. This guy, moron, brings it to a public place to fix his computer. I mean, can you be any more dumb? It's incredible.
I think I have to say, last show we were trying to avoid the drug problem he had. Although I would have to say that's a direct correlation, and sometimes they say correlation is not causation. I'm going to say it is, because he was under a stupor when he dropped his laptop in the water and it shorted out or whatever. And he said, take care of this and fix it. And it was brought to the repair person and the store. And the Rudy Giuliani's got all the receipts, literally. And
wait a minute.
Picked it up.
Well, wait a minute now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mob used to call this falling asleep in the getaway car. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this retard, Hunter Biden, drops his laptop off at some repair joint, right? The guy who's repairing it starts looking at some of the crap that's on it. And for him to call the authorities, which he did do, by the way,
Mhm.
There must have been some really, I mean, he's not going to sit there and read emails. He must have
Right.
seen some things.
Well,
Mhm.
so for clarification, he fixed the laptop, and he was
Right.
so again, if you're reading the moron meter, and it's pegged to the point where the glass is breaking, it's because this absolute idiot drops it off to get fixed, and then doesn't go and pick it up.
No, he
And
doesn't go and
after
pick
a
it up.
certain amount of time, it becomes the
Right.
property of the store owner, which means now he can go through it.
Right.
So
Mhm.
that's why that's how we get to moron exposed. You know what I mean? I can't, and I'm trying. The restraint. I know it's a family friendly show. This guy has got to be on the scale of dumbest people in the world, the dumbest of dumb.
Oh, he's dumb. Not only did he spell out the entire scheme in all the emails to his family and friends and his business associates and partners that were doing this. What I meant by the guy who was going through this laptop, the guy's like legally blind, right? So
Mhm.
the story goes, the repair guy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
not going to sit there and painstakingly read all these emails, okay? What I meant by he saw things were he probably saw some pictures and videos on there that were a little bit untoward,
Mm.
and which led him to go ahead and call the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Which, by the way, when you're a repair computer, I have friends that are computer repair uh, uh, people, and they own businesses, and they are obligated if they find something untoward or anything bad, including porn, all the bad stuff that we. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but anything bad, they have to report it. So that it's his obligation to get help, and he waited the prescribed amount of time. Once he got it fixed, they left it. He abandoned the computer and the drive, and that's how he was able to look at it, to see if get it back to the person, I guess, or he just left it alone.
Well, the point is, not only did our legally blind hero here, not only did he call the FBI, who had the laptop apparently for about a year and did nothing about it. They had the
that's
thing
another
during.
question.
That's another whole kettle of fish.
Yeah.
They had the laptop for a year, the FBI. They did nothing with it, but lo and behold, well, son of a bitch, he made a copy of the hard drive and he gave it to Rudy Giuliani. Yikes.
There's divine intervention, I have to say. I think it's divine intervention.
Give that man a medal.
I mean, you could possibly, because all politics is crooked, no matter what side of the fence you're on. You could potentially say that this is one of those things that, is going to help Trump and blah blah blah, and they're keeping it in their back pocket, which may or may not be true, right? But if the emails are authenticated, which by some of the reporting this morning they are, it doesn't really matter who it helps.
This is no good for anybody. Let's just be really clear here about this whole thing. I mean, this is nothing to jump up and down about.
No.
You had members of our government at the highest levels during the Obama administration. They were selling their offices and access, and they were co-opted by foreign governments and influenced.
Unfortunately, Alpha, it's not limited to 2008 to 2016.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, anybody that works in DC or works around DC has seen or heard stories like this before. And I'm not saying everybody's crooked, because I do honestly believe that there's some people that come to Washington to do the right thing, whether they're on Capitol Hill or they're just, staffers or whatever. But this ruling class that's out there has literally fed off of the backs of the working man and woman in the country, and they get rich doing it. and they do it because it's who you know and it's networking. I'll be honest with you. I'm somewhat guilty of it. I think everybody is. I know, if I'm looking for my next job and I know a guy and I've done a good job at my last job, you start putting in for it. Everybody kind of does it on a low level, but this is next level crap, right? This is international garbage.
Well, it's also there to keep your hands in, what power you have, so you don't lose any power, and then go on to the next level of power. And then once you get it, you're corrupted because you don't want to let go of it. I mean, that's my thought on it.
Well, let's talk about it on a more basic level.
Mm-hmm.
These are the same people that screamed from the rooftops that Donald Trump was a national security risk because he had something to gain from his dealings with the Ukraine or Russia or so-and-so. And these people, and it was all proven that everything that they said was total bull. And these are the same people that accused Donald Trump of doing that. Donald Trump just showed up like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago on the political scene.
Mm-hmm.
These people have been in Washington, D.C. for 40, 50 years, right? Yep. So these people are pros at playing the game. Hillary Clinton, you think the Clinton Foundation, you think they had anything great to offer? They were selling influence. Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden, talk about somebody who would be an absolute national security risk.
Jeez. Who does he owe favors to?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. His kid was out there globetrotting around the world saying, "Oh, my daddy is this." And when they asked little Hunter, how did you get this job? Well, my last name is Biden. I mean, it's right on tape. I mean, give me a break. I mean, they're shameless in the way that they've approached this.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're caught. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens. Talk about a national security risk. You've got a guy who's a hair's breadth away from the presidency. He's been a hair's breadth away from the presidency for a lot of years. And now here he is again, really close to being the guy or potentially the guy. And the Chinese Communist Party, the Ukrainians, and whoever else, and Burisma, and all of these people, they bought him. They own him.
Mm-hmm.
National security risk in Donald Trump? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. So, look, it's all disgusting. It's Delta, I'm right there with you. I understand how the DC machine works. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's all about putting your arm around the next guy. And sometimes those of us that work within that system, we all do the right thing. We do the right job. We do the good job. And sometimes we get to move on to the next job and do the good job and do the right job, right? So we're not playing it dirty.
Yeah.
We're playing the game the way the game is supposed to be played. We're playing the game based upon our merits. These people are playing the game based upon their titles.
Yeah, 100% Alpha. And just for clarification, there's nothing wrong with working hard and making sure that your hard work is noticed by the next person you hope to work for. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So for the audience out there is something wrong. However, if I said, hey, Alpha's a big shot and I happen to be a friend of his who gets to go on his podcast every now and then. And, if you wanted to meet him, maybe I could help you out if you give me $150.
Yeah, right. Small unmarked bills in a manila envelope, please.
And by small, do you mean like $1 bills? Because I'm only asking for $150.
Well, we're not going to the gentleman's club, okay? We're doing other things. 20s work. But hey, listen, we have an expression, when you're in business or military or fire or whatever, you always want to leave it better than you found it. These people are not wanting to leave it better than they found it.
They're killing it. They're destroying it.
They're milking the machine for all it's worth for their own personal gain. They're not giving anybody any benefit except themselves. They're wrong. They're dirty. They're disgusting, and they need to be caught. Yeah. And they all need to go to prison. And if people don't start going to prison for this BS and this criminal activity, then there is no law in this country.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
So I'll just permission to make an analogy. So the closest they got to somebody of really popular and high stature going to prison was General Flynn, and that took a lot. And he's not going to jail, nor should he, by the way. But if you think about it, you get to a certain level, you don't go to jail. You go to Danbury minimum security for 18 months, country club out in Connecticut. You don't go to jail.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're still not free to leave, and you still lose your reputation.
Yeah,
and you still
agree.
and you still get that little title of felon after your
Right.
name.
That's
and you
true.
know what? If I can get pulled over if I have one too many cocktails, I can risk going to jail for a year. But these guys milk foreign governments for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars into the billions for their own personal gain and just kind of laugh it off. Well, I get to slug it out with a felony, or I get to go to work every single day, and they're just stealing from me. They're having a party on my tax dollars. That really pisses me off. And they really need to go to jail. That's disgusting.
I agree. Somebody does. I just don't know if I have the confidence that you do that somebody actually will.
We can only hope.
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is President Trump's got to get reelected, and everyone, has got to get behind him, get out there and vote, make sure he gets in there so that he can continue to drain the swamp, which is about 1,000 feet deep.
Oh, absolutely. And he said it himself. The swamp is really deep, and you know what? He's right. But I think I believe he's trying. I really do. I really believe he's trying. Look, guys, we're at the 1 hour mark. We've really kicked the can a lot. We've kicked it around, covered a wide breadth of topics tonight, and we've. Thank you everybody for giving us your valuable time to listen to what we have to say. We're really honored about it. And that 9 cents will go to feed a small child somewhere, a very small child, very, very small. Very small.
If it continues, I mean, it may become $90, which would definitely feed a small child.
And that will get donated to some worthy cause somewhere. Yeah. We're not doing this for the money. We're doing it for fun.
You guys are, from an outsider, sort of on the inside, because I know Alpha, just so everybody in the audience knows, $150. I'm just kidding. Don't send me $150. You guys are doing yeoman's work. You really are. This is very important. The conversation is really important, and I mean that seriously.
Well, we appreciate
that. That's why we're doing it.
Look, I would show my face, but I don't want to be canceled again this week. You know?
Right.
And I don't want to have people show up at my house. That would be very bad. With the burning pitchforks and it'd be bad. I would get tired from digging a lot of holes, but that's another story altogether. So, looks, everybody, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it. We talked about a lot of stuff tonight. We talked about Antifa, and it's not just an idea. It's an organization. And after the election, I just really sincerely think that things are not going to get better. I think it's going to get worse. I really hope not. I'm trying to be optimistic that maybe they'll just give up. That's wishful thinking. So, how they say hope is not a plan, right?
Well, I think you're going to see a huge backlash, and it's going to be, they're not really tolerating it very much right now. And I think, once the election is in the win column for the president, God willing, then they can start using the riot, or they can start using some federalized resources. If they have to, the uprising statute that they were talking about early on.
Well, the Insurrection Act.
The Insurrection Act. They were like daring President Trump to use it, and he was very, very smart not to, because that would have been used as a hammer to hit him over the head.
Look,
now you use the federal troops.
Nobody wants to see that.
I'm
talking to you from
experience. Just saying.
Yeah. I'm talking to you from experience. The last thing that you want to see is soldiers and OCPs and airmen in downtown. Name your state. Name your city. With M4s and Humvees. You don't want to see that. It's bad out there. I don't think it's going to get worse because I don't know how much worse it can get.
Oh, it can get a lot worse. It can get a lot worse.
I believe you. I just, I'm somewhat optimistic. I'm trying to see the glass half full.
Nobody wants to see that. You know what? Look, I just want everything. Look, we're not violent people. Okay, we're the people that have seen violence. Okay, people that have seen violence and had to do violence for whatever reason. We don't ever want to do violence.
That's correct.
There are consequences with that. We don't want to see it. I just wish everybody would learn how to behave. So, moving on, we talked a little bit about the voter fraud. I've got an alibi to the story. A little ray of hope I want to leave you with. There's a story on. There's a gal. Her name is Kathleen Lochell. She owns a bakery outside of Philadelphia. I believe it's outside of Philadelphia. Every year, every election season for the past, I don't know, I think it's 25 or 26 years, her family's been baking, Democrat cookies and Republican cookies. This year it's Biden and Trump, obviously, blue cookies for Biden and Trump are red in 2020. They're nonpartisan. What they do is they've run this as an experiment for the last 26 years. So they sold 1,600 Joe Biden cookies. That's like a lot of cookies, right?
It's a lot of cookies.
It's a lot of cookies. A
And
lot
they're
of flour,
cookies.
a lot of sugar.
There are a lot of cookies. They're big cookies. They're about the size of they're about an 8-inch cookie. Remember the big half moons you used to get? I'm not going to say where, guys.
Yeah.
They don't call those anymore, by the way.
Whatever. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably not politically correct. But anyhow, you know what I'm talking about, guys. Where we're from. They're good size cookies. They eat like a meal. Okay.
Yep.
So they're about $4 a piece, $4.25 a piece. And they donate some of the money they make to charity, which is a very nice thing to do. They sold like 1,600 Biden cookies. That's like a lot of cookies. They sold 4,295 Trump cookies. So that's the poll. That's the poll I'm going with.
Yep.
I'm going with that because she's never been wrong. And the Stony Brook poll that's been right like 90% of the time for like the past 75 years or something like that has got Trump winning in it's a landslide, hopefully. So, I think there's hope to be had out there, and get out and vote no matter how you have to do it. Right. And at last but not least, Hunter, where are you, Hunter? How deep
they put him in a basement. Let me tell you, they stuck him in a basement and said, "Don't you ever come out again. Keep your mouth quiet." And he didn't do well on the Democrat convention, and he definitely doesn't want to be on any TV shows right now. They put him in a basement and they locked the door and threw away the key.
He did one interview and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Also, he gets the moron award. He really does. It might be an annual. I can't see anybody doing something more stupid. But I challenge the audience to actually prove me wrong.
He's like the bank robber. He's like the bank robber that tries to deny it after the dye pack went off in his face. Right.
I
mean, give me a break.
So, hey, they can send us an email at info@signal50.com and tell us what other ways they could make a mess out of this. But yay, we're waiting to hear from you. So.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear from you. So you know what? Look, we're going to have to see where the Hunter Biden thing goes. We've given you our theory, or at least my theory, on how I think, everything is connected. The Chinese own the Bidens, and it's really a bad deal. So, with that being said, we're gonna cut it out of here. We're gonna give you our shameless plug for our single affiliate. But before we do that, we want to make sure that you're aware that we're on Parler, Rumble, YouTube, Podbean, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, and Bravo just informs me that we're on Audible now. That's really interesting. We've finally arrived. We're on Audible. Yeah. All we do is provide them content for free that they resell in some meaningful way to put money in their pocket.
Working
for the man. Working for the man. So
and
anyhow,
having fun doing it, just so you
absolutely,
know.
we're having a great time. So listen, everybody out there, I want you to go to pofusa.com, pof-usa.com, Patriot Ordnance Factory of Chandler, Arizona, makers of the finest AR-15 style rifles made anywhere in the world, anything from 22 long rifle all the way up to 7.62 by 5.1. They've got some really interesting 6.5 Creedmoor options for you too, for your long range requirements. Some of the finest guns made anywhere. You put them up against anything, anywhere made in the world. That's what I use. It's what I recommend, and that's what I teach with. So, that being said, we're going to leave you some show notes and the links to the show, some of the material that we use, so you can go do a kind of a check it out thing for yourselves. So everybody out there in radio land and vodcast land, thank you very much for your time and attention for the past hour. Listen to us yammer on. So we really appreciate it. Please feel free to give us an echo, share us, listen to us, download us. It helps us get up there a little bit, get out there, get the message out. So thanks a lot.
Comments are great too. What you want to hear some more of, what we can improve upon. You can get us again at info@signal50podcast.com, or you can leave comments right on Rumble or on YouTube, which we don't like. You won't find us on Facebook. You won't find us on Twitter. We are Parler, and Parler has been very good to us, and we're seeing a large amount of echoes, and we're seeing a large amount of people following us. So we truly appreciate it.
Right. And here's a little stock tip. If you got a couple of dollars and you want to play in the market, I'd look for a short position on Facebook and Twitter about any day now, because next Thursday they're going to get subpoenaed in front of Congress, in front of the Senate. So
yay.
That being said, everybody have a great week. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and be safe out there. We'd like to thank our soldiers. Yeah, thank you very much. We'd like to thank our soldiers, sailors, and airmen for protecting us 24/7, 365, our first responders, our police, our firefighters, our EMTs, and those healthcare workers out there working as hard as they are. Thanks a lot, everybody. And Delta, thanks for joining us one more time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.